Imagine a mirror, not a haunted mirror, not a magical mirror, just an ordinary mirror. The kind most of us stand in front of every morning, the kind that quietly asks a question that we rarely say out loud. Am I still enough?
This is the substance.
I'm Sue.
Because beneath all the body horror, blood, and grotesque transformations of the substance, that's the question this movie is really asking. And the answer it gives is terrifying.
Welcome to 75 Vintage On Demand.
Welcome back to 75 VOD. I'm Vintage, and today we're talking about one of the most disturbing films I've seen in years, The Substance. Released in 2024, it was written, directed, and co-produced by Coralie Fargeat. The Substance is a film that disguises itself as body horror, but it's really an autopsy of self-worth. It's about beauty, it's about aging, it's about obsession. It's about the impossible standards women are expected to meet. And perhaps most painfully, it's about what happens when you begin competing against your very own reflection. As always, there will be spoilers. Southern accent. There will be spoilers. Let's get into it. The day Elisabeth Sparkle became invisible. The film introduces us to Elisabeth Sparkle, an Oscar winning actress, a celebrity, a fitness icon, a woman who spent decades building a career and being admired, desired, watched, and celebrated until one day she turns 50. And suddenly, none of that matters anymore. Not because she changed, not because she became less intelligent, but because she got older. The entertainment industry has a strange relationship with women. Men are allowed to age into wisdom. Women are often expected to age into irrelevance. And Elizabeth discovers this the moment she's discarded by the very system she helped build. She helped build. She's fired, replaced, thrown away. Not because she's incapable, but because she's no longer considered marketable. And that's where the horror begins. Not with the drug, not with the mutation, not with the blood and gore. The horror begins when someone convinces you that your value has an expiration date. Now, let's talk about something the film touches on quite well, and that's the fantasy of a better you. After her dismissal, Elizabeth discovers a mysterious product called the substance, a black market miracle drug, a shortcut to perfection, if you will, a second chance. One injection later, Sue is born. Young, beautiful, confident, everything Elizabeth believes she's no longer allowed to be. And here's where the movie becomes fascinating because Sue isn't really another person. Sue is an ideal. She's every version of ourselves we've ever imagined. The younger version, the prettier version, the thinner version, the more successful version, the version who made all the right decisions in life, the version who never got older, the version who never made mistakes. She is the version who somehow escaped being human altogether. She just arrived perfect, right? And I think this is one reason the cosmetic surgery industry continues to thrive today. It taps into a very real insecurity and often promises a shortcut to perfection. But perfection, much like Sue herself, is often an illusion. And just like the substance, the pursuit of perfection comes with rules and consequences. 7 days as Elisabeth, 7 days as Sue. Balance must be maintained, no exceptions, because they are the same person, and that is important. The movie never lets us forget that. They are not rivals, they are not enemies, they are literally one individual. That's not how Elizabeth sees it at all. And it's certainly not how Sue sees it. Because the moment comparison enters the equation, unity becomes impossible. And we all know that comparison is the thief of joy. Now, Act 3 enters the picture. Let's talk about it. At first, Sue feels like freedom, a fresh start, an opportunity, but eventually the film reveals something darker. Sue becomes addicted to being Sue, and Elizabeth becomes addicted to hating Elizabeth. And the arrangement begins to collapse. Of course, it does. Sue starts stealing extra days, and Elizabeth starts to deteriorate. Resentment grows, and what we're witnessing isn't science fiction anymore. It's addiction, it's a bit of self hatred. The substance isn't really about a miracle drug at all. It's about the endless pursuit of validation. And we witness this endless pursuit every day in pop culture, on social media, and sometimes in our own lives, where validation increasingly comes from external approval rather than internal acceptance. The belief that happiness exists just beyond one more transformation, just beyond one more surgery, promotion, pound lost, compliment, achievement, one more version of ourselves. And like all addictions, the reward never lasts. The satisfaction fades. The craving returns. And the cost keeps increasing. The film visualizes this with physical decay, but many of us experience it emotionally, internally. The feeling that no matter what we accomplish, we're still not enough. I think we got to start practicing mindfulness that we are, no matter what's being bombarded on us from external sources. Now, the genius of the substance is that it tricks us into thinking the conflict is between Elizabeth and Sue. It isn't. The conflict is an internal struggle between the id and the ego, the psyche, the nervous system, all of these things that's been compounded on us. It's the ultimate conflict is self-rejection. Sue hates Elizabeth because she represents fading into obscurity. Elizabeth hates Sue because she represents everything Elizabeth feels she has lost. Neither can survive because neither accepts the other. And that's where the film becomes heartbreakingly human because most of us have experienced some version of this. Maybe not through age, maybe through career changes, maybe through a divorce, parenthood, weight gain, failure, loss. Life creates versions of ourselves we didn't expect and that we don't recognize at times. And sometimes we spend years grieving people that we used to be instead of appreciating the people we have become. The tragedy isn't that Elizabeth grows older. The tragedy is that she begins believing the myth that older means worthless. FYI, newsflash, it does not. It is grace and seasoning and beauty and acceptance. Let's talk about Harvey. Oh, he was a terrible character, but he has significant representation in this movie. The film also makes an important point about who benefits from insecurity. Harvey isn't just a character, he represents an institution, a system, a culture. He's the embodiment of every voice that profits from making people feel inadequate. A voice that constantly whispers, "You're not enough. You're too old. You're too big. You're too small. You're not smart enough. You're not good enough." because insecurity is profitable. Entire industries depend on convincing people they're broken. And once someone believes they're broken, they'll spend a fortune, sometimes that they don't even have, trying to fix themselves. The substance takes this idea and turns it into horror because that's exactly what happens. Elizabeth buys the promise of perfection, and the promise destroys her. We've seen it so many times in pop culture. A beautiful woman or a guy gets plastic surgery and they look so botched in the end, it's almost hard and hurtful, painful to watch. Now, let's talk about this monster that is revealed, we shall say. The grotesque fusion of Elizabeth and Sue. It's a nightmare of flesh, monstro. It's limbs and faces and bodies and parts and ugh. And yet, Monstro might be the most honest version of Elizabeth we've seen. Monstro is what happens when impossible expectations collide. She's both youth and aged, beauty and decay, perfection and failure, confidence and shame, all existing at once in the same body, which ironically is exactly what being human feels like. It feels like all of these things colliding on the inside of us. The monster isn't horrifying because it's unnatural looking. It's horrifying because it's real. That's the real her. Not physically, but emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. It is the chaos that she's dealing with internally. She's every impossible standard crashing into one single body. Now let's talk about the ending, as it was heartbreaking. The final image of Elizabeth dying on her Hollywood star feels tragic, but it also feels strangely peaceful because for the first time in the entire movie, the consumption is over. No Sue, no Harvey, no audience, no beauty standards, no performance, just Elizabeth, the person who existed before everyone told her what she needed to become. And maybe that's the lesson hidden beneath all the gore. The substance asks questions most of us spend our entire lives avoiding. What if the person you're trying to become isn't better than the person you already are? What if change does not represent loss? And what if the version of yourself you're mourning was never meant to stay forever? Because eventually, all of us must choose. Life continues on through every stage of life, and we must be willing to accept, expand, and grow with it. The more we resist, the more we turn into monstro ourselves emotionally, physically, and spiritually. Because eventually, all of us must choose. We can spend our lives chasing perfection, or we can learn to accept the imperfect person staring back from the mirror. And according to the rules in the substance, only one of those choices leads to survival. But that's just my interpretation of this movie. What do you think? Was the substance about aging? Do you think it was about addiction, beauty standards, the entertainment industry, or something even deeper? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this analysis, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join me here on 75 Vintage on Demand because some movies entertain us, some movies disturb us, the substance, some movies stay with us, and some movies force us to confront the parts of ourselves we'd rather keep hidden. This movie doesn't just do all four, it asks us what we're willing to sacrifice in order to be loved, even by ourselves, to ourselves. Until next time, I'm Vintage, and I'll see you at the movies. Bye.